match. That little adjustment we did with the back in the raw color palette, it really did the trick. So what we got to do now is we're going to Apple T, we're going to rotate this, get this set up. I'm going to scale this down. Going to scale this down just a bit. Okay, that's about the size I want. Now, what I like to do when I'm setting up stuff like this is I like to use the rulers to kind of give me basically a horizon line, meaning where is the floor? Where does the floor meet the wall? Where does the ground meet the sky? Just some type of, definition where I can kind of see, okay, well, that's the ground there, so I'm going to put the guitar, could put it here, but then it's not going to look weird, so I'm going to move her down just a bit so you got a nice, basically line of contrast. So what we're going to do now is make a spotlight, because we need some lighting effects on this guitar. The fastest and easiest way to make a spotlight I know of, and there are many different ways to do it, but this is the quickest, is using the shape layers. Now the shape layer in this particular instance is kind of used as a master, and then you make a layer and then go from there. So what I'm going to do is go up to my pen tool, and I am going to pretty much basically make a triangle. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to be distorting this. Now here's my triangle, and again, notice how the fill is set to 0. That's because when I initially drew everything up, it was set to 0. It retains the previous setting whenever you use something. So this is pretty good, this triangle. I want to give it a rounded edge because when the spotlight shines down, it radiates out, right? I mean, it's more like kind of like this flashlight. See how you got a nice feathered edge and stuff. So if you have a light source up there, it shines down to the floor, and it has a bit of a rounded feature because of course the light spreads out the farther away it gets from its source. A little bit of physics there, I believe. So you notice that when I mouse over the pen tool line, you get this really nice. The pen tool itself turns into a plus. Again, this is just like Illustrator. If I was to click on that, pow, it actually adds a control point where I can drag this out. And you see, you've got the nice points of the Bezier curve are already added. So all you have to do is just drag this out, and you get a decent curve. It saves you from going like point, drag out, and then drag out, and you get a curve. One extra more control point than you might need, but in the big scheme of things, it really doesn't matter that much. So there's my nice, conical shaped spotlight. So you're looking at me, you're going, hey man, like that's not a spotlight. Well, it's because we're not done yet. What we're going to do now, there's several ways to do this, and I could add a layer mask to this actual layer itself, and do that, but I'm going to use this as a master. So I'm going to hit my Option key, my Apple key, I'm sorry, and make a selection. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to turn that layer off, and I'm going to fill it with white. Now, why white? You can use different shades, it's up to you, but white is a nice example just to work with for right now. And then I'm going to go to fill right there, Shift F5, and it's going to say, well, you want the foreground color? Yes I do. 100% opacity, sure. Fill her up. Okay, Apple D to deselect that. So now we've got this nice thing here. So what I'm going to do now is, number one, I want to make sure, I'm going to blur this, and I want to make sure that my object is in pretty much the middle of the canvas when I blur it. The reason why is because if it's over here to the side and I blur it, and I'm going to actually show you. I'm going to do a Gaussian blur, for example, and I'll go, sure, let's blur this all like crazy. And it's going to blur it. Now, oh, how about that? It worked. Scratch that. So, anyway, so what we're going to do, basically, is going to undo this whole thing. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to blur it. I'm going to go under Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur. I like Gaussian blur because it gives me a lot of control, and I can, slide it up or down. It's just not like the other blur filters where you go blur more, blur less, etc. It's a good, nice general, and it blurs it out pretty good. So it's really up to you how much blur you want, and you just really want to create a nice soft feathered edge. So you go, okay, cool, done. Well, you know what? It still doesn't look like a spotlight, does it? It's getting there, but it's not really there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find out which direction the spotlight's supposed to come from. What I mean is that if you go in here, you'll notice that, well, the light source, the shadows that are being cast, are coming from this direction going that way. And how do I tell? I tell because along here on this side of the actual guitar, I mean, it's darker, right? There's a shadow being cast there. So if I was to actually put the light source from this side, right, from the right-hand side, it's going to look kind of weird because there's all shadows along this side. So what I have to do, what I should do to make this a believable composite, is to scooch this light source to the other side. So things tend to complement each other more, and you're not flying in the face of nature, really. Anyway, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this wonderful spotlight and we're going to rotate it, Apple T, and we're just going to bring that over there and say it's going to be coming from this corner. And it doesn't hurt. You can enlarge this as much as you want because it's supposed to be soft and supposed to be kind of weird. So you can mess with this to your heart's content, and you can skew it and do really whatever you choose. All right. So now we're getting somewhere. This is starting to look like a spotlight now. Okay. So pow. I'm gonna transform this, and also have a drink of coffee. Right. Coffee is my life. So what we're going to do now is take this particular image, and we got to kind of soften this out a bit because this light it's pretty intense. It's kind of, well, blurring away everything, and I can put it behind, you know, the actual object if I wish, but it's not really working, you know. So usually when you're throwing light on a subject, light covers everything. Light is ambient. It fills the air around you. So usually you want to have it above everything, above all your layers. And actually I'm going to go in and I'm going to label this light, if I can type. Okay, and I'm going to label the guitar. If I can spell today. There we go. Right, so now we got the guitar and we got the light. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to down here, make a layer mask. Okay, so we got this nice layer mask here. Hit the brush tool. I'm going to take off the caps lock so you can see, you know, how big this is. And if I hit the right bracket, you notice the brush gets bigger. If I hit the left bracket, the brush gets smaller. I want a huge brush. When you're doing this kind of stuff, the bigger brush, the better. I'm going to knock down the opacity of this particular brush because I'm just going to go in, and what I'm going to do is using a layer mask, gradually mask out or virtually erase away bits and pieces of this spotlight to give you the effect. And you'll see what I mean. I'm just going to go in slowly and slowly just erase away, and you'll see what happens is that it starts to look more like a spotlight. You're giving it a bit of the depth by not keeping the color 100% all the way through, or I guess the intensity of the light all the way through. And you know, you can play with it a little bit. I mean, it's really however you want it. It can, and usually when I do this stuff, I don't really go through and just like hold down my mouse or my you know, pen tablet and just color all through here, because that'll give you like a real 100% coverage. I just like kind of click or take the pen tool and just drop it on the tablet, and you give more of a mottled effect, and that's the effect you want, because really it's either smoke or it's something that is reflecting off this light source and giving this appearance of the light. If there wasn't any smoke or you know, stuff in the atmosphere, in the air of this particular, you know, fake scene, all you would see would be really just the light shining on the floor and nothing else. So if whenever you're trying to do photorealistic Photoshop compositions or composites, try to observe the real thing and observe how it behaves. It'll give you a really good understanding on how to recreate it in Photoshop itself. So anyway, I'm just going to go through here And also another thing to notice is that light diminishes the farther away it gets from its source. So if it's like 100% here, I believe it's like 25% here, and 10%